Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Hammering Down. I'm your host, Kaylor Hodges, and I'm hoping you're having a great day. You heard the intro music, which means you know I have a special guest. And if you watch the video version of this, which does go up on YouTube, I know not a lot of you watch it on YouTube because you'd rather listen to it in podcast player, which is fair. But there is video to the intro music, and there was a special person on there, Chris Richards, which is one of a player, not only from Birmingham, but also of one of the players for Crystal Palace, who me and our special guest, Garret Komatz, we have a shared interest in. Garret also has a special interest in Detroit City, which, yes, I can hear you all boo hissing as you listen, but I promise he's good people, and I kind of hate that I sort of like Detroit City. It's fine. Garret, man, how you doing?
Kaylor, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on this Monday. It's hard to believe. I think we're already almost halfway done with the year, first off.
Yeah.
We're a couple way days up for first matchup between our two clubs this year. And we're, 50, 60 days from the start of Premier League? Palace at Brentford in second weekend in August, third weekend in August?
It's coming up. It is coming up. Yeah, man, I'm excited. This match on Wednesday, CBS Sports Network, by the way. Please, it is not Golasso. It is not going to be on ESPN. I'm not sure if it'll be on My 68, which is, if you're a Birmingham fan, you know who that is, Detroit City. That's our local broadcasting partner. Not sure if it's going to be on there. Just in case, go to CBS Sports Network. Go to your favorite bar and tell them to put on the Legion game, because you can finally do that, and it's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. I want to give you a quick update on the twos, on the Hammers. Since their defeats against Asheville City 3-1, they lost 2-0 to Southern Soccer Academy, whom I think has a relationship with Brentford. Funny enough that you bring that up now. They drew 0-0 to Athens United. That was at home. They drew 2-2 to East Atlanta FC, who they took on the beginning of the year, who they also drew with 1-0. And they lost 3-0 to Asheville City, which I just want to say, losing to Asheville City it's not a big deal. They are the class of our area for a reason. They've been around for a long time. Since the last time we did the weekly WFC, Legion have the women's team, the Three Sparks, have played a few matches. They won 1-0 versus Greenville Liberty. They were one of the top 10 teams in the USL once again, and they dispatched them 1-0 in a thriller at home, but unfortunately lost 2-0 to Asheville City at home. You have just two more opportunities to watch the Three Sparks in person. Once in a couple of days' time on the 26th, the same game as the Detroit City game at 7 p.m. And then one last time at 6 on the June 26th at 3 p.m., which will be a doubleheader for the women's team and the men's team as to take on Lou City. So go check that out. I'm going to try to get one last weekly WFC before we get to the end of the season, so you guys can always have a good time listening to the players. Speaking of W League, and this is just going to be a brief conversation, Detroit City may never lose again. They're really good this year.
Yeah, it's it's probably the best squad. I feel safe to say for us in W League. We had a first women's side team was 2020 in the UWS. We had a much shortened season due to the pandemic that took place. Our third year in USL, and credit to Dave Dwahey, our coach, who's one of also front ownership, and the group of former players involved in coaching. 8 wins and 2 draws so far. Great football, a heavily rotated squad too. So the fact that we're able to be getting a lot of players in and out, but sticking to the same mindset shape is impressive. 2 matches for us in the end of the regular season. Trip to the west side of the state on Thursday to take on Midwest United. A draw or a win by Detroit City gives them the Great Lakes Division. And then last game of the regular season at Ann Arbor, which is an hour west of us. That is on Sunday, June 30th.
The one player I think that if Legion fans are like, I want to continue watching W League, but I don't know who, and they end up watching Detroit City, Kayla Addison has been a superstar. And doesn't she play for the indoor team as well? Like, because I feel like she's always around the club.
Yeah, Kayla Addison, I kind of almost call like our unsung of our women's team. 15 goal. I think she had actually take the back, going like 20 goals in the indoor season PASL. And then she's featuring more so in the second half of this W League season. The first half of the season, we had a lot with our. We have a lot of good high school talent and young college talent. I think one name you're going to hear about in the future is Lily Jekyll, 15-year-old player, maybe the best player, men or women, to don a Detroit City shirt. And the talent we've seen from right now from her this year is impressive. Another one is Sophie Romine, who literally had 3 straight home games where she ripped bangers outside of the box top bins. And
I was going to say Romine made news, like around, like it got to me basically because the Twitter feed is an interesting thing, and random stuff shows up. I became very well aware of Romine because I just kept seeing banger after banger show up in my feed, and I was like, maybe this girl's pretty good. Lily Jekyll, you mentioned 15 years old, 3-star, like she's played 3 times, all of them starts. She wears the number 10 as a 15-year-old in a pretty experienced squad, and has 2 goals, 2 assists.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Our co-host, if anyone that checks out our Tunnel Talk 451 or our Majors Detroit stuff, Adam Hernandez, that game that Lily scored 2 goals, he correctly called not only that but the scoreline result. We played our bottom team in our division here, and she even missed a penalty too, and still got 2 goals. And I'm just like, man,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You speak of 451. That is your podcast that you are a part of, which we talked to another member, former member, may he rest in peace, Red. He's alive.
Oh, he's still lurking. He's still lurking.
He's still here, but he's dead. But we talked to him last time. We kind of got the background of 451 and like why that number, what does it all mean, and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to check that out, go back into the catalogs, people. It's a good time. But last time Red and I talked, that you guys had TMFJ, Trevor James, and Detroit City, frankly, owned Legion. First time that we played against y'all, Legion hit the post 3 times, and the world or most of Birmingham became aware of a guy and a random accountant named Nate Steinwasher. And then just things never seemed to go to plan, including just a complete come apart at home to end the series last year. But now you guys have a new coach, Danny Dicchio, who comes over from Sacramento, and you guys have been some of the class of the USL. It's starting off 5 undefeated, 0 drop points, all wins. Have a little bit of a bumpy spell of 2 points in 4 games, but you guys are officially back. So what's been the difference?
I think if you've seen, for Legion fans that might have seen the City teams that they played in 22 and 2023, workmanlike, structure, shape, discipline, and obviously Nate Steinwasher, who stood on his head that Good Friday of 2022 and that rainy game that was on ESPN Deportes, our first matchup between our sides. But they reflected, I feel like, the manager and Trevor James is, if you look at his background in his playing days, he was a box-to-box midfielder when he played, and he's a gentleman, nice guy, always in there. And I felt like our team was reflective of that, almost maybe too nice at times, too timid at times. I felt last year, especially with that, because we got in, thankfully, because of strong defense, strong goaltending, but our attack left a lot to be desired. We beat Riverhounds in the first match and the first round of the playoffs last year, which was fantastic. Way to get your first ever goal, Dominic Gasso. But the exit was a lot. Yeah, the exit was a lot like our season. So enter in Danny Dicchio. who in his playing days was a striker, someone who I think roughly averaged 1 every 4. Played, at QPR, played at Sunderland, Derby County, had a little stint in Italy, went to Toronto FC, had the first ever goal and the first ever red card, both in the same game. Someone who, and what that entails is this: Danny, like Trevor, is a nice guy, but Danny's also an intense guy. And having a chat with Matt Lewis in the winter, our Detroit City center back who just retired before the start of the season, was this team was looking forward to because he was so intense. And you're seeing in terms of the style of play now, the moves we made in the offseason, bringing in Elvis Amo, Alex Villanueva from Orange County. We had Ali Coote, who has since gone back to Ireland to play back in Ireland with Shelburne. And you're seeing also like Victor Petzera getting him on loan from Chicago Fire's 2 side of MLS Next Pro. You're seeing James Murphy also and Maxi Rodriguez being pushed higher up. And you're seeing a City team that wants to take people on, wants to cause havoc, move the ball. We started off well, but on April 6th, we had 2 injuries, which kind of caused a setback. Elvis Amo first went down, non-contact. We thought it was a groin. Turned out the hip adductor was torn right off the bone.
Don't like that.
No, and to be honest with you, we thought he was going to be out longer. So when he was showing up to be available for the Rhode Island match, which shout out to Matt and Ryan from their now Tide Talk, because we chatted with them before that match, we got that spark. And Reese Williams was another guy that went down that game, who, like Maxi, has been encouraged to play in a more attacking role this year, as opposed to a fullback playing as a winger. He took a nasty cheekbone injury that he was out for about a month. Nate Steinwasser actually was out the last 2 league matches because of how many goals we were conceding. Carlos Saldana featured in net for Detroit City the last 2 league matches, who Danny Dicchio has history with when he was coaching at Sacramento. So there's now where we've had 2 straight clean sheets in league play, 2 straight 2-0s. Now there's some questions about what is the squad going to be moving forward. And we are about to hit our most brutal stretch of the season, starting with Wednesday's matchup. So it's going to be interesting. And I think we're really going to see what this squad this year is made of. But the signs so far have been very promising. So let's see how it goes.
You mentioned the stretch. Legion on Wednesday, 3 points, and Miami on Saturday. I mean, lads, it's Miami. You don't lose that. Tampa Bay Rowdies, who have since figured out how to play football. Memphis, who can attack with anybody in the league. North Carolina, who has one of the most stout defenses that I've seen in a while. Sacramento, who, you guys get them at home, Dicchio's old club, which they're sputtering, but that's still a quality team. That's
right.
Not a fun stretch. That's just not a fun stretch.
No. And then come August, road trips to both. We got to go back to you guys. We got to go to Tampa. We got to go west. We got to go to Vegas. I mean, it'll be a lot about what's this squad's character, I feel like.
Well, there's a lot of guys, and the one thing that's been beautiful about Detroit City is that the defensive mainstays haven't changed since you guys have entered the league. It's been really nice to see. One of my most anxious interviews I've ever done was actually with Devin Amu-Mensah. We did it on the USL show, and I was so anxious to interview him because until he went down with this second ACL, he was my MVP vote. I thought he was the best player in the league, and he came back, and he was right back where he left off. Stephen Carroll, he has just been fantastic, going and just kind of changing where he plays. Like, he was a guy who you could see play out on, just like Mensah, could be a fullback, could be a center back. Michael Bryant, same thing. Like, he's playing right back for you guys right now, right? I mean,
started off as a right back. Lately been coming on as a sub. Matt Sheldon, another guy we brought on, was plenty of USL Championship experience. Someone that our first ever USL home game was against Battery when Sheldon was with us, so you already know how much he got from our crew, all sections of that supporter stand that day. But somebody that's become another popular one in our culture, and someone who's very fast. I didn't expect that much speed from that dude.
And someone who I was super stoked when he came to the USL, and then he made his way to you guys in a trade, hasn't been there very long. Brett Levis might be one of the most underrated players in this league. Just in like his ability to play left wing back in general is just, he's fantastic. You're going to be hard pressed to find someone truly better than him in what he puts on paper. On top of that, you mentioned Carlos Saldana. You also have Nate Steinwasser, who got majority, if not all, the minutes in the friendly versus against Lima. Who was it? Is it Atlas? Is that who you guys?
Pumas from Mexico City, Liga MX.
Thank you. You guys played them. I think you got almost all the minutes for you guys then, but Saldana has been getting a large lion's share of minutes himself between the cup run and a couple league matches. And then someone who, the more I look back at the USL shows best 11 for for the mid-season break, if you will, almost like get to the mid-season, who's the best 11? James Murphy. I look at that lineup and I regret not putting Murphy there. It was Murphy or Malloy. And if you're having the conversation of James Murphy versus Aaron Malloy, you've done something very well for yourself. And when you think about that back five, if you want to put Murphy in that conversation and including your goalkeeping situation, you see why Detroit City just does not concede goals ever.
I mean, I think also, too, another thing with James Murphy, and especially because James Murphy is basically your link between that back four to that midfield, whether we're doing a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, or a diamond like 4-4-2 lately, is he's got that aggression. He's not afraid to chirp. He's not afraid to get in a tackle. And not only that, that's even further elevated Lai Jop's game, who, is still young and still talented, but he's really coming in lately to the point. I think key moment on last Saturday, the 15th win when we had against Battery, was we had used our last sub, Ryan Williams, veteran English midfielder we picked up, came on for Ben Morris. So I was like, okay, who's going wide? And they put wide left. And I was like, okay. You're like, what? This, because you've only seen him. You see a guy central, or you see him when we've actually been destroyed play as a left center back. He took to it. And Danny Dicchio in her scrum after was talking about wanting to utilize Lai's explosiveness more. So I think having James be there, not like, obviously we talked about how much it frees Maxi to just cause havoc up top, but that also allows Lai to, use the speed, use that shot, and, add more to his game that he already has.
If Legion fans are hearing the last name Jop, that was the other Jop that came from Atlanta United to the wrong one, or the right one that you should have signed, which Detroit ended up getting the other Jop eventually via trade. But, that was the one when I heard that the initial Jop was joining Legion. I got really excited because I thought it was a lie, Jop, and not Mackie Jop, which, boy, do I wish we got the other one. But he's been so good in his career, underrated, and he always seems to come up with 2 to 3 goals a season, and they always feel like they are in the biggest moments possible. Yep. Like, if I'm just thinking of players who just, strike daggers into the hearts of fans, and I'm thinking of Detroit City, granted, got to keep in mind, I didn't follow Detroit City much before the USL, but, you're thinking of Openo, who just was just nasty with you guys. I think of Maxi Rodriguez. And I think it's Job, because it feels like every time something needed to happen, Job had the assist or he had the goal. Him, Maxi, and Openo always just felt like they were all together at the same time, just ruining teams' days. And if it's close late and the ball's on Job's foot or Maxi's foot, I've already conceded the loss.
Yeah, and I think also too, somebody that has taken a good growth in this new role he has this year. Legion fans maybe have used to seeing Ben Morris up top last year. He's kind of taken a role more as either right wing or a left wing, depending on how the lineup is, and that's kind of freed him a little bit to deuce a little bit more. But he's got 2 goals already this year, both of them long distance strikes. And I know he had 2 big, he had a big brace in that game in August between our sides. So I'm curious with the short week with Miami ahead. I want to see how much rotation Danny does on Wednesday. So I'm curious to see, is it the same lineup league-wise as it's been for, the last couple, or do we see one of Danny and Reese, one of Ben and Reese out, and Vic, and obviously, because at least a handful are going to be in. Maxi's going to be in. James and Lai should be in. You would think Steven Devin's going to be in, but we just picked up Abdi Salim from Orlando City on loan. So young center back, which we needed after Matt Lewis's retirement. So I think you're going to see a lot of faces that you Legion fans have come to know over the last couple of years, but we also don't know. And this is something new to us, because before you knew who your 11 were going to be week in and week out.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about who's going to be out top, as we just kind of work back to front, I mean, Yazzie Matthews has been a long-time Detroit City guy. Victor Becerra, he's a guy who, I didn't really know too much about until this year, but he's been getting regular playing time with you guys. But then you start looking at who's next after that. Obviously, Elvis Samo hurt, right? Like, Ali Coote not here anymore.
Sold. Yep.
Gone. So from there, you're kind of relying on you're relying on Maxi kind of playing that false 9, real super advanced 10 to kind of being the threat in the middle. And on one hand, if you're Detroit City, you're saying, don't like the fact that I don't know who's going to be up top for me. On the other hand, unlike other years, it feels like the support pieces can make a difference with goals. Unlike years past, where if your striker did not score, you were just not going to score. You guys were going to get another 0-0 win or a 0-0 draw, right?
Yeah.
And this year, it feels like there's a little bit of goals by committee, midfield, forward. Everybody can contribute.
Yeah, and I think that's that adds a little bit of an element. I think it adds a little bit of a different way, and it kind of, you're seeing people get confident, people with a spark, and like I'm looking at it right now, Maxi Rodriguez has 5 goals in league play already. He had 4 all last year because he was been used to playing a pivot role. So I think that's promising. I'm really curious to do we go Elvis Amo back up top now? Now that he's been back a couple weeks, played a lot in the friendly on Saturday, seems to be fully rolling in. It'll be interesting. I do wonder how we're going to fill the Ali Coote hole for right now. Just because there was a lot of talent. We were really excited for the move. We understand it. Guy gets homesick, things happen. You need to go back home. Absolutely do that. We hope that we wish all the best to him. He's now with Shelburne, League of Ireland. But who's going to fill that role? It's going to be Ben. It's going to be Reese. It's going to be Lai. And maybe we put somebody else centrally. That's where we're going to see in there too. But then also, we still haven't even get into our set pieces. Yeah, we only got 1 headed goal or something like that off a set piece this year. Now with Steve at Orange County on June 1st. But now, like you talked about, Brett Levi's, who's a service provider. James Murphy is a service provider. When Ryan Williams comes on, that's somebody that one didn't expect to get a lot of minutes so far when he comes in as a sub, but his set piece delivery is ridiculously good, like inch perfect, and it's a blessing, you know.
It's different. I know one thing with Legion fans. There's someone that I think should be taking every single one of our free kicks, and I'm a little peeved that he is not. Kobe Hernandez Foster is probably the best free kick taker we've had in Legion history. Granted, it's an incredibly low bar. Bruno Lapa being the next closest one, which granted he could drop one on a pin if he wanted, but not really someone who could go for goal. He was not someone who was going to put it on target. And it has been a breath of fresh air, which I wish he was on them more. But having an actual threat of someone standing over the ball, as opposed to in years past. I mean, when we talk about set pieces for Detroit, you're talking about Stephen Carroll, you're talking about Michael Bryant, you're talking about Devin Amumensa, one of them rising up, getting their head on it, or poking it with their toe at the back post, and that's how Detroit City gets a lot of their points the last 2-3 years.
Right.
Having someone who can put in a quality free kick, not only aiming for those guys, but also who can test the keeper a little bit and force a corner out of a situation where you're 30 yards out and maybe shouldn't even be doing it. That is just an absolute weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, like I said, those are game changers. It adds another dimension for managers of opposing teams to figure out, like, what do you got to look for? What situations do you want to avoid? And the chess battle,
So for Legion's side, we saw something pretty interesting for Legion this last week versus San Antonio on Juneteenth, where they get a 3-0 win. San Antonio, who have, in all nicest way possible, fighting for their lives just in general.
Right.
It is a 3-0 win, but it's also context 3-0 versus San Antonio. Don't want to take anything away from the players, obviously, but not the best competition we have seen. But I think what we saw was a guy like Enzo Martinez, who has been a mainstay. If there was a USL Hall of Fame first ballot, just not even close, not a consideration. Enzo's in. I have said since day one, he is a better holding midfielder than he is a striker. He just happens to be one of the best poachers I've ever seen in my life. He just finds his way to every deflection and manages to put it in. It's what annoyed me about him when he played for Charlotte. It's what I love about him now when he plays for Birmingham. He just always happens to be in the right place at the right time to score. But they dropped Enzo deep. They let Kobe go forward. They let Pasher go forward. They let the guys do their work. And I want to be very intrigued to see how, if they continue to go with that look against Detroit City. With, we talk about James Murphy, who he is a true connector. I'm not going to act like he's one of a CDM who sits back and plays a pseudo third back. He's not a glorified third center back. He is a true defensive midfielder. But if at any point Detroit City goes with a low block, he is tucked in there as deep as he can get. He is essentially a third center back in that sense. Right. Do Legion try to overload the midfield and leave Enzo up top and say we are going to put everybody forward and try to break down that defense? Or do they rely on more not necessarily passive play, but let Enzo work in the midfield, let him spray it out wide, let him do his defensive duties, and then let him make a late run to the top of the box, where Detroit City have been susceptible at times this year, those late runs to the top of the box? I mean, if that is what Legion decide to do, how do you think that works for Detroit, having Enzo play a little deeper and then go?
I think one of probably maybe the big matchup when there, and I think we were talking a little bit before, but I really enjoyed John Morrissey's thread on the match talking about that the diamond shape. It can look like a 4-3-3. It could be a 4-4-2 when you tuck Enzo in, and then you roll with and you have Kasim and Pasher doing work on there and other runners. I really think, if I'm remembering the matchup from May at Keyworth on Memorial Day weekend last year, we had a one-on-one battle essentially between Pasher and Devin.
Yep.
And I think you're going to see probably a little bit into that as well. I think if anything, what I was kind of surprised with was how much when we played Charleston on the 15th, how much they had to change their game every 15 to 20 minutes because they tried to do their ground thing with Malloy to Markanich, Yakaza, and Yakaza wrecked us last year. Like I think he's the reason why Battery went at Keyworth in August because he set up Augie Williams. But the defense, I think, routed. They stuck to the play. They were kept forcing them to get aggressive. Is there moments where your play forces them to chase, like our second half in Louisville, which we were 1-1 with them, and then the second half happened and we lose that game 5-1 because we stopped staying structured. We started trying to chase them on every single thing. You can't do. You and I both know when our experience is going to Lynn this year, you can't do that when when you're going up against Harris and other guys like that because they're just going to tic-tac-toe you. Rhode Island saw that and they took care of that. I think I messaged Matt like, "Yo, what are y'all doing in Lynn?" Because it was 3-0 when I checked the score, and I was like, that type feeling. But I think that's going to be the type of battle. I'm curious to see how that's going to play. Obviously, I think you're going to have maybe James against Enzo. You might see Lai a little bit on there. In your opinion, how much you have a short week as well?
Yep.
You got you have to travel, come to us on Wednesday, and then you got to be back home and host Louisville on Saturday. How much of that side from Juneteenth and your one against San Antonio, do you expect the same exact 11, or do you feel like you might see Tommy San trying to make a couple of changes here and there with Louisville on the mind for Saturday?
I think it's the same 11. I think that they have kind of settled on this being the best 11. Depending on how the game is going, I think that we could see quick subs. But I think that he's going to put out the same 11. I think he's going to roll it out there and just see what happens. And whether Legion are up or if they are, if they're tied or if they're up, Tommy is going to make some quick subs and prepare for Lou City. But if they're behind, I think, as he should, we'll go for it and cut the losses of Lou City if that were to happen. And I don't want to say that this is that short weeks don't matter. They obviously do matter. But I also know that Legion have one of the best recovery programs that you can have with UAB as one of their, primetime, physicians. They are the ones that do all the things for them, plus all the stuff that they do for them off of the field, all the partnerships. If anybody in the USL can handle a loaded schedule, I do think it's this Birmingham team, purely for what they have off of the field. So I think it's going to be a full send, try to get 6 points from the weekend, not conceding a single minute.
Yeah. Van Oekel or Hibbert? Who do you see in goal?
Hibbert. So Matt is going to be out for at least a few weeks. Nothing's going to be officially said. He might be on the bench. I think if Matt has to enter a game, that means 2 goalkeepers have been subbed off. So that's not gonna happen. Jaden Hibbert's a different kind of goalkeeper from Matt, and it's very interesting. Hibbert is a true quote unquote modern goalkeeper. Against San Antonio, I think it was the 18th minute. One of the most impressive things I've seen out of a Legion goalkeeper. He took on Jake LaCava, and when I say took him on, I mean put the body to him, pushed him off like he was a center back, and then split 2 defenders for a pass. And it was a perfect pass. And I was like, that's something that I would get excited about my center back doing. And you're our goalkeeper, and you're so young. You're like 24.
Sweeper keeper, essentially, yeah.
A proper sweeper keeper, yes. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles or how Legion handle it with Detroit City, because this is not your mama's Detroit City that gives you 70% of the ball and they defend it like their lives depend on it, and then they get one breakaway chance. This is a offensively competent team who wants to have as much of the ball as they are conceding. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Hibbert reacts and how they use Hibbert when he is not being used as kind of a third center back that gets to wear gloves.
I think that'll be an interesting thing in their battle. I'm curious to see. There was a talk in the media scrum post Charleston Battery about Danny Dicchio playing keepers based off of matchups, and I don't know if that's something that what we're having our development amongst our supporter core, whether it's Northern Guard supporters or anything else outward, is that actual talk by Danny, or is you playing face with because we've had a stalwart so long in Nate Steinwasser? Are you going to play your keepers based off matchups? Like, is this a Nate match? Is this a Carlos match? That type of thing in distribution. That's going to be, I think, another interesting thing internally here, because you guys have seen Nate in and out for 4 times.
Yeah.
Do we? Carlos is a different keeper in a sense from Nate. One, there's a size difference. Nate's a great one-on-one keeper. He reads the ball well. He sees the ball. His reactions, his reflexes are great, and he's got that edge. Carlos is different in a way because he's imposing with his size. He can catch up to people well on there too, but he's also great, especially a different way in aerial balls in the box. Good control, good poise. It's almost like you don't have to worry about anything. Y'all do your thing because he's in goal.
I have talked about Nate Steinwasser on every program that I've ever been on. I sing his praises. He's one of the kindest people I've ever met. I talked to him after one of the Detroit City Legion matches. I forget which one.
I think it was the 22 one, if I remember that one.
I think you're right. And he is just so nice, so kind. Yeah. He also, I get down to the field so I can watch the goalkeeper warm-ups because it's the part of the game I'm obsessed with. I am completely obsessed with the goalkeeper side of things. It's part of the reason I have the other show that I do for the Glove of the Game. Like, I love it. And I've seen a lot of goalkeepers come through Birmingham. Well, I've seen well over 100 goalkeepers in net between backups and starters and all the matches. Nate Steinwasser is the most impressive warm-up I've ever seen. And that includes a Drake Callender who has started for the U.S. men's national team. Brad Guzan, again, U.S. men's national team. They cannot hold a candle to what I saw Nate Steinwasser do. He went through his entire 20-minute warm-up, which had, which had the early just like quick reaction saves. It had crosses. It had long distance shooting. He did not drop or bobble a single ball.
Yeah.
I have never seen anything like that. Not once did he parry it. Not once did he bat it down to the ground to catch it. Not once did, when he landed on the ground, it kind of move a little bit. Nothing left his palms. And it was one of the most stunning things I have ever watched from a keeper come to Birmingham. I've never seen anything like it.
And then you add to the fact that the dude's a full-time CPA.
Yeah.
And it just like the man's work ethic is something to admire, something to hold, and anything that he's achieved, he's done it through not just effort, but just hard work.
He was a guy when I used to do a predict every single match in the USL across the East and the West. One of my favorite projects, took up way too much time, couldn't pull it this year. But when Detroit City was joining the league, the very first person I said, I was like, Nate Steinwasser. I was like, if you watch this guy's film from when they were in NPSL, I was like, he's not NPSL, I'm sorry, NISA. I was like, he's better than everybody else, and he's going to come into the league and be the best goalkeeper. Goalkeepers are one of the few positions that you can really see how it's going to translate to the next level. And I was like, he's going to be the best one. just watch. And Cedeno is a guy that while I love, again, I'm raving about Nate.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Carlos Cedeno. I
Right.
like the moxie that he carries the ball with. I like how confident he is when he gets the ball to him. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
he offers a different side of the game that Detroit City, at least in the USL era, has not really experienced before.
Right.
And I find him very fascinating, and I want to see how it translates in person when I get to watch him then, if he
Yeah.
gets to play.
And if it helps you, if anything, well, because you often know, like with goalkeepers, it can be such a competitive battle that, yeah, you hope that for the sake of the team you're doing well, but how do they really get on well with each other off the
Yeah.
pitch? You're really, it seems like, and you can kind of tell the vibes, Nate and Carlos already get on well. It's like, yeah, there's a goal for you want to be the number one on this team, but at the end of the day, it's like the one rooting each other to succeed. And like, Carlos, when it's weird for us also to say Carlos Cedeno has been here a short time, but he's already going down in history because he's the one that gets the goal that causes us to beat Houston Dynamo in the U.S. Open Cup. He would have told us that like before the season, like, yeah, whatever, you're out of your damn mind. Even before Ryan Williams had that thunderbolt one to make it a game, but it just tells you, like, in that sense, like, there's a special thing in this time. We're in an interesting period because whether it's Nate or Carlos, we got what Danny's referred to as two almost number ones. And whether it's a transition period, whether it's like this for another year or two, we'll see. But just, for us, take it in as much as we can.
So I don't really like doing predictions because sometimes they just end up being so like we don't even know who's playing. I don't know what's going on, and things happen. And I don't like to do it that very much that way. Like, what do you think the score is going to be? But what do you expect from this Detroit City side, especially at home? On a national broadcast. And I'm not saying that makes it different, but like we have seen Detroit City show up in different ways when they know that they are on the national scale, right? How do you think that this is going to go on the field, but also with just the support in the stands?
It's going to be a big match for the significance. It's the last match in June for us at home, the last match of the Pride Raiser campaign. Northern Guard Supporters Pride Raiser, which let me take a look on my other screen here. I think they just hit over 2,000. What the Pride Raiser is pledging for local charities that benefit LGBTQ support awareness. Ours is with the Rivella Center, which does great work, especially with the youth center, youth part of the LGBTQ on there. So currently, right now, that is at $2,063.69 pledged per goal. 17 goals already this year in the month of June, men's and women's. So this is the last match for that in June. So you have that right there to start things off. If you've seen our games, it's a passionate atmosphere. Keyworth Stadium, especially when you look at some of the newer stadiums in U.S. soccer, your San Antonios, your Linz, even where you guys play at UAB, I'll refrain it from a line from Mad Men, simple yet significant. Doesn't gonna blow your mind out aesthetically, but it has a character in it that maybe there's some, for you and I personally, there's some Selhurst bits in there.
Yeah.
But it has, it's a unique atmosphere. It's going to be fiery. It's going to be passionate. It's going to be a big game. And I think with that being on television, you also know that, hey, this is a game on TV. There's some other things. So what does that mean? Banner, tifo, display wise? I don't know. I'm not really in the game supporters much as these days. They're a great, magic bunch. They'll come up with some cool stuff, but I know it's going to be a passionate match for those purposes. And then you add to the fact that this is a highly competitive matchup between two teams to be as high up in the table in the Eastern Conference this year as possible. And Detroit City trying to make Keyworth a fortress, which we have struggled to do these last 2 years. So for the fact that we have, are unbeaten in league play at home, and I'm knocking as I'm saying that, is impressive so far. But we have to maintain that, especially if we're going to get through this brutal 2 months of the season to be as high as we can in the Eastern Conference table. I think it'll be a fun matchup because I think what you guys did in the second half against San Antonio, what you did in that stretch, you took over the game. Like, it's like you clicked in that moment in those goals. You got one, and then Pasture did a Pasture run and blasted it. That's two. Then you get another one. So are we going to see a Legion side that's going to have more of that? Or are we going to see the Legion side that we have seen at other times this year? At Lynn, against Memphis, for parts of the Indy match. That's going to be there. And what city side are you going to see? Are you going to see the city side that's getting back to the rhythm that they've been to in the Rhode Island matches in Charleston? Maybe I did, and beating Pumas. Are they going to be on? It's a friendly, but still, it's a big win. When you look at it, you beat a league. And if you want to know how Pumas fans are taking it, go to Twitter and type in that and do some hit translate posts.
What was the taxi drivers and blacksmiths
and carpet? Yeah. So it meant something. And I'm going to give a shout out to because I was driving out of Keyworth before the game. There's the lot behind. So we have a historic baseball stadium like in the areas and warm-ups in there because the stadium's right within residential streets in Hamtramck, which is an enclave in the city of Detroit. And I'm pulling out because you have to go through alleys to get back on the main road to then get on the way home. And there's Puma fans coming in. They got a walking banner. They got, the whole drum. They came in, smoke and the family side. So it was a party atmosphere. And I think that gravitated to something. And I think you're going to see as much of that as you can at Keyworth. And I think that's going to make it an entertaining matchup. Both sides have something to prove. So at the end of the day, who's going to be the one that proves more, or are they going to cancel each other out? We'll find out Wednesday night.
Speaking of Pride Raiser, I want to go ahead and give a quick plug for the Magic City Brigades, our main supporters group. I don't believe that Puente 12 is doing one. If they are, have no idea. But the Magic City Brigade, they have their Pride Raiser going. They have 15 pledges, $113 per goal. They are trying to get over the 700 mark. So if you would like to go check that out and help support local LGBTQ plus groups, you can go to prideraiser.org, check that out. They have said that they are going to contribute even more after a wonderful human decided to spit on the pride flag right before the game. So they have upped their Pride Raiser amounts. Some members have since then, just to let some people know they are loved and they are appreciated despite the hatred that is still in the world. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to try to remember to put this in the description. If it's not in the description, it's www.prideraiser.org, Magic City Brigade. It'll be there, I promise. Or DM Magic City Brigade on Twitter, X, wherever it is. Just DM them there. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm so excited. I keep telling myself I'm going to get myself to Detroit, and flights aren't that expensive. It's just I don't think we've played you guys in Detroit on a Saturday. I think we only play on Fridays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I think we refuse to play on Saturdays.
Saturday last year, but it was a Memorial Day weekend, so you have a holiday weekend that you got to deal with. So it's inopportune. It's been inopportune, so to speak.
So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations of I don't know. I wish I was able to get up there, and I'm going to try to get up there before you guys get into the building of the new stadium, hopefully 2027. Second time you guys have moved stadium, but you guys have definitely deserved it. I'm excited to see what Detroit City does, and I kind of said it grumbling, but I do like the players on this Detroit City team a lot. You mentioned Trevor James and just being kind of a nice guy. And you mentioned how it really reflects in the players, and it really does. I mean, every time I talk to them, any Detroit City player, they are just wonderful humans. It doesn't mean that they don't get under your skin. I mean, Maxi Rodriguez, despite being one of my favorite humans in the league, it gets under my skin like nobody's business.
He gets competitive. He's competitive. Really competitive.
Wonderful guy. Like, I talked to him before the game at home last year. He was wonderful. That was the game that he was hurt. And he said he wasn't playing. And like, I was just like, thank God. Like, the last thing I want is to see you out there. Like, I hope you're healthy and happy, but I do not want you to, I don't want to see you on the field at all.
Especially what he outside of the foot on you and on our first
that was, that was the away fixture for us, the outside the boots. I mean, that was also a ridiculous finish. I wanted to be mad and I just couldn't. I was like, that was gross.
Yeah.
So
and that's a good goal is a good goal. Well, yeah, because what was it? Our 2022 game over at your guys' place. Our first goal, Connor, with an overhead.
That was the overhead, yeah.
And then Kasim was like, "Oh yeah, I could just do this and just crate inside of the left foot."
Yeah, bar downed, and then there was one last goal. Yeah. Yeah, because that one's brutal because the overhead goes in, and then Prosper had one of the best goals of the Legion season, went bar down against Nate, and I was just like, wow, we're going to get a point. And then header in, like, I think it was like the 84th minute. I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
All right. On for dear life at the end of it.
Yeah. Listen, Garret, obviously we've talked a little bit about 451, but where can people find you if you want them to find you at all? But if they want to listen to you talk a little bit more, where can they listen to you?
So if you're looking for Detroit City centric stuff, that's our Twitter account at 451DET, 451 Detroit on YouTube, where there's our live throw-ins, which we started doing, our Tunnel Talk episodes, which we've been doing on video, as well as Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can check your podcast out. Molding over city short videos, which includes like any special stuff like our with Alex Wright, one of Detroit City's ownership after the official stadium announcement. Also, we do Detroit City Contact as far as the Majors Detroit. So Detroit City Sportscast, which we cover Detroit City along with the other teams in the city, even the Detroit Pistons, as much as it hurts me right now. Our recaps in there. Make City Make Spence is our city-centric edition with that, which is Sean Spence. Highly recommend his writing, his Patreon, Words About Shapes. If you're looking for a unique perspective, eloquently well-written, and also about the book of the sport of football and all the formations and shapes, give his Patreon a follow. But yeah, Majors Detroit YouTube, that's at TMSNX Detroit on Twitter, and YouTube at the Majors TV. And you can find me Twitter, Instagram, Discord, my personal at GM Komatz. And if there's any Crystal Palace fans, at CPFC Detroit for the Detroit Eagles. So.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Garret. It has been an absolute blast. Always good to get a little tunnel talk in with you, man.
Absolutely.
So absolute blast. Follow him on all the things. Tell him that you appreciate him. Do all the stuff. And for all the people listening, I appreciate you all so much. Until next time, guys.